Now,
Hi everyone, welcome to the DevOps.com webinar sponsored by HCL Software with the headline Three Groups in Your Organization That Benefits from Value Stream Management. I have a very fascinating panelist with me today, introducing Stephen Wong, DevOps Solution Lead for Asia Pacific at HCL Software. We have Pradeep Mashru, DevOps Business Lead for Asia Pacific at HCL Software. And last but not the least, Chris Novak, Director of Software DevOps Advisory and Adoption at HCL Software. So, very warm welcome to all of you, Stephen, Pradeep, and Chris. And over to you to start sharing this amazing introduction webinar as well as all these aspects from the value stream management and why it's such a hot topic in the DevOps world, including some of the benefits and also some of the Q&A session, which we'll be taking at the end of the webinar. So over to you, Chris, now.
Great. Thank you, Dheeraj. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. For wherever you are in the world, I know we're from all different places ourselves, so it's great to be here with you. What I'd like to do, I'm going to show some slides in a little bit, but we aren't going to just do a slideshow. We want to have it very conversational. If you have questions, drop them in the chats. We'll answer them as we go. We just find it works out better this way so that we can kind of interact and answer the questions or talk about the things that you want to talk about. So what I think I'd like to do first is I'm going to ask, Pradeep and Stephen both to give a little bit of background, their perspectives, because I think, as we talk about value stream, we'll find out that perspectives are important. And the value stream is about an entire organization. So you're going to have many folks in your organization that have a lot of different perspectives on what that means for value stream. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to them while I switch into basically starting to have some talking slides for us. So Pradeep, maybe a little bit of background.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. And hello, everyone. This is Pradeep from Down Under. I'm based in Melbourne. I manage HCL DevOps business, as Chris mentioned, but have been into the DevOps industry since 2013, in different capacities. I've been in different roles in different capacities. I very strongly believe that how does organizations and enterprise imbibe upon and execute DevOps, that methodology makes them either market disruptors or from being disrupted. So DevOps has become that differentiator between a disruptor and being disrupted, and have seen that in practice with many organizations across the region and across the globe myself. Also have Steve with me, my partner in crime. Steve, over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Pradeep, and hi everyone. So it's Stephen Wong here. As Pradeep mentioned, so I'm his partner in crime, based out of Australia as well, but I'm in Sydney. A little bit about my background: I've been in IT for way too long, 25 years. Started my career in '96 as a software developer. In my opinion, I think that's the best time to be a software developer, because between '96 and 2005, right, that's when I was a software developer. There was great change, right? Those were the days of waterfall methodology going to an end, and we start seeing rational unified process. And then Agile, started with extreme programming in the early 2000s. And that's on the methodology side. On the software development side, that was when the SOAP specification was defined. That was when people started talking about XML RPC. The world of monolithic applications, Java applications, C++ applications, they start to open up with standards-based APIs. So very, very interesting time. And I count myself really fortunate to have been a developer during that time. My focus was primarily on Java, did a lot of that. And then around 2005, I started going into test automation, did a lot of that stuff. And of course, test automation led the way into, infrastructure automation, into deployment automation. And, today, right, DevOps, if you ask me, there's lots of stuff going on, lots of things about culture and things like that. But at the bottom of it all is automation that kind of like paves the way. I count myself very fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time throughout all this time. And here I am talking about what's coming next, value stream management. I'm very, very happy to be here.
So it's better to be lucky than good. Is that what you're telling us, Steve?
Yeah. Being lucky, well, there's this saying, right? You got to be good to be lucky, right? So,
That's true too. So yeah, all right. Thank you, Pradeep and Stephen. I'm Chris Nowak. I am based in Southeast United States, so it's very early or very late for me, depending on which direction you're coming from at this point. So my background probably is a little bit different. I've been with HCL for a couple of years now, but I spent 23 years, I guess, in American banking, IT banking. So Wells Fargo, Bank of America, been through many mergers. I guess the joke was, same seat, three banks. And so I did that for 23 years. And then I went out, and so we were also doing DevOps before DevOps was even a word. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but DevOps was about 2010. And we were doing things like this, as I'm sure many of our audience is, way back in early 2000s. Back then, if you told somebody what you were doing, or in 2010 and said, oh, this is DevOps, right? You get that old sysadmin that says, what are you talking about? That's just the right way to do business, So it's just, you invented a new word for old stuff, I guess. I spent a couple of years after that doing consulting, organizational DevOps level type transformation consulting, and was also fortunate enough to land here at HCL, which I often describe as the best job I ever had, and it is. So with that, you get some really interesting perspectives, I think. One, Pradeep coming from one side with his particular background, Stephen Wong coming from a different direction, and then, I'm coming myself, although I know, Stephen, you were a developer, right? I'm coming probably with the most baggage, if you want to think of it that way, coming from the corporate side, much like probably all of our audiences here today. So I've got the scars to prove it, and the stories and the lies as well. So maybe we'll tell some of those stories today. So those are our quick intros. Sorry, go ahead, Pradeep.
I was saying, looking forward for those stories.
Yeah, we'll have to think through them. A little bit late. We don't want to let too many stories slip out. So let's see here. Just got to flip this over a little bit. Sorry, I'm moving around a little bit here. I'm juggling screens, which is always interesting. So, this webinar opens up with, value streams. Are they for everyone? But I think before we go to that question, we probably need to talk about things like, what are value streams? Where do they come from? What I often like to do is to start with this idea, this question of, well, what is DevOps? And I have a personal belief on it. I guess I'll kind of share that afterwards. But I'll give everybody a tip here. I don't think there's a wrong answer when you describe what is DevOps, because I think it means different things to different people, and each company, it means something different to each company as well. So when we go in and talk to companies, the first question I'll ask is, well, what are you trying to get out of it? What does DevOps mean to you? So I'm going to stop there for a moment, though, because I'm going to ask our esteemed panel to give us what they think. What does DevOps mean to them? What are the important things about it? So, Pradeep, do you have a viewpoint? What does DevOps mean to you in your experience?
Yeah, so let me go first. So DevOps for me is what many of my customers and large enterprises have explained that to me over the years. And senior executives specifically, in the large organization, they always talk about DevOps as a differentiator. That is how they get the market edge, they get the business differentiator, in the very highly competitive market, specifically in the COVID-infected era we all living in across the globe. DevOps and agile application development either makes or breaks the competitive edge to customer. So DevOps as a culture, DevOps as a methodology, and the DevOps as a different technical tools provide the differentiator to the large enterprises and senior executives to be ahead into the market and gain that extra market share.
Okay, very good. And Stephen, any thoughts? What is DevOps to you in your experience?
Well, I guess, haven't been a developer myself, and haven't been, having been doing software development and then passing it on to the ops team to be deployed into production. DevOps to me is really the breaking down of walls. I know, most people out there know about this, but it's been really real to me because I've been in that situation where, I'm coding, I'm spend a long time building up, code according to specs, and then throwing that over the wall to the ops team, right? And it wasn't until I came out and do auto, consulting, that I spoke to the ops side and realized, some of the pain that the ops team faces, when dev and ops are separate. So to me, DevOps is breaking down of that wall and having the two teams working together. That's the big thing for DevOps for me, from my point of view.
Very good. And so what does DevOps mean to me? I guess I sort of covered it already, but ultimately I kind of take a bigger picture view of DevOps, and it can operate on a number of different levels, right? It can operate, as Stephen has talked about before and mentioned, there's an automation level. You absolutely need that. There is the process level. So as you start to look at these smaller areas where you say, well, here's places we put automation, you then start to link those things, and that you start to look at the process of culture, across it, sorry. And then pretty soon before you realize it, what you're doing is you're talking about how our teams behaving better together. So that's why I say it can be a number of different things. You might have a small team or just a small company, and you already work together. Maybe you're a bunch of friends and you work together already. So you just look at that automation aspect because you're already working well together. Maybe you're a little bit larger, and as you've grown, some of your processes have changed. So you look at those types of things. And then ultimately in larger companies, particularly where I've worked with, hundreds of thousands of people, the culture and the behavior becomes a highly dominant factor as to how good you are at what you do. So that's why I say there's really no right or wrong answer. It really depends on the situation of the company. So now, as we're going to lead into the next question, well, what does that mean for value streams and everything else? But first of all, I'd like to thank everybody that said hi to us in the chat. I was scrolling through there. It's great to see you all in there. We did have a question. Phil had asked, what are the key things we think is a differentiation? I guess I probably could have gone into the chat and tried to figure it out a little bit more, Phil. But so if you're saying, what's a differentiation with DevOps, or how teams are different with DevOps, I think it's really just situational. What do they need at that time? There's a quote out there, do what you can with what you have where you are. You'll hear that in a lot of DevOps seminars or whatever. And I think that that's true. Sometimes you don't have everything you need. You don't have the people maybe that you would like with the right skills, or you're learning new skills as you go. So you work with what you have after you set some objectives. And I see that, Pradeep, you dropped an answer in there as well. And so obviously, Stephen, Pradeep, feel free to either clarify questions in the chat or drop answers in the chat or bring it right back out here. So, thank you for that question, Phil. So that's DevOps. Well, what at the next level, right? This is ultimately what we think. And we stole this shamelessly from Damon Edwards, one of the luminaries in our industry. But DevOps, it's not a technology problem, it's a business problem. It's how we work together better, how we work with our business better, and then achieve those corporate goals together, however we're aligning to whatever those goals might be. And which kind of leads us into the next thing, at least the way I look at it, and again, no right or wrong answer. I see value stream management, what we're talking about today, as kind of the next level of DevOps. If you've done those things in DevOps that we talk about, you address the automation, the process, you measure everything. There's another quote out there, if it moves, measure it, right? And then the culture. Value stream management is that next level where you can take all of those lessons you learned in, DevOps 1.0, and then look across your entire organization or your business, whatever makes sense to you, to do different things you couldn't do before, right? With this idea that I can see a lot of different things. I can govern in a nice way, govern it, right? You want to control errors, those sorts of things. So that's kind of a first step. So that kind of brings us to these concepts. And again, I'll ask Stephen this time. Do you have what is value? If you want to answer one or both, either way, whatever you want to do. And if you answer both, you'll probably have to tell us what you think the difference is. And we do have a slide to help out with that afterwards. But go ahead, Stephen, take a crack at it.
Okay. Yeah, Chris, I think the way you have put it, value stream management is DevOps 2.0. As I was alluding to earlier, my view of DevOps is really the breaking down of the wall between dev and ops, right? Making workflow a bit more seamlessly. But if we take a look at just that, right? If you ask me, it's still very IT centric. It's still something that exists in the IT organization. What value stream management to me is taking a bigger view now, right? Taking a step back now and taking a bigger picture look at that, right? And now say, hey, instead of just looking at breaking down the walls between dev and ops, we start taking a look at everything that stands in between the point a customer comes in and raises a request to us, to the point we deliver that value, right, to back to the customer, and everything that happens in between. Yeah, and to me, that is what value stream management is. It's now breaking down the walls across, right? Because as we know, in a system there are multiple pieces. If we optimize one piece, what we're doing is we are creating maybe an issue in another piece, right? And what value stream management to me is really taking a look at this entire flow and see how we can optimize that. I'll leave the question on value stream mapping for later, but I'll pass it on to maybe Pradeep. You want to take a stab at sharing what your thoughts are?
So Steve, Steve, that is a very interesting point, and the way you explained the breaking down of the walls. But I think of DevOps as always a differentiator for the larger business, right? Before we go into the differentiator piece, let's zoom out a little. Let's think about, so DevOps is around for a long time, right? We are talking about 10, 12, 13 years, maybe more. As a concept and as a methodology and tool set has been around for a long time. But new age and new era bring new challenges. The biggest challenge enterprises and senior executives specifically face today is visibility. They just don't know where is my software pipeline, stuck. They just don't know, how do I move across my prioritization? There are critical customers who are asking for bug fixes like this, and teams are working on it, but senior executives look for that visibility. Anything and everything be able to provide that visibility, those eyes would be able to offer great value, and that is value stream management. Value stream management creates that pipeline of pipelines view and give that visibility so that enterprises be able to prioritize and make sure that the critical things happens first. That is overall value stream management. Mapping is another thing altogether. Everybody wants to go somewhere. They want to reach somewhere. But before we reach somewhere, we need to understand where we are, where we stand. Where do we start? And value stream mapping provides that starting point. It provides that current state so that customer would be able to map their journey to the nirvana, to the would-be stage. So very new, hip and happening topics, both value stream management and value stream mapping. And we do a lot of work into both of them, don't we, Chris? I think we are warmed up for your enlightenment now.
Oh, don't put that on me. So it's actually really, very interesting, and I think you're starting to actually knock on the conversation or the message of, is it for everyone? And so you started to cover, ground there where you're talking about, well, there are teams that do this and executives that need that. So, I'm kind of going to give you a little bit of a spoiler, and yeah, value stream is for everyone, just like DevOps is kind of for everyone. I'm going to circle back to the question in the chat. And so the question, is, I think I may have gotten it a little bit wrong before, why is DevOps a differentiator for a company? And you're right, Phil, it's a broad and a vague statement, but I think it's probably because every company is different. Different people, different goals, different sizes, different industries, right? The way we do certain things in banking might not be the way you're going to do it in a startup. In fact, I'm sure it's not. Because when I worked at Bank of America, they wanted to be Google. And I said, you can use Google practices, but you will never be Google. But that's okay. We learn from it. The other thing to think about, whether it's DevOps or value stream management, is it's never really done, right? So it's always a journey. When I was consulting for a while, I actually heard another large, one of the large consulting groups say something. We were talking about DevOps, and they said, "Oh, we did DevOps last year." And I was really surprised they said that. I'm like, "What do you mean you did it last year?" DevOps isn't something you do; it's something you are, right? It's a journey, and it doesn't really ever end. So I guess when you ask the question, what's a differentiator? If I had to look at it in any particular way, I would say it's sort of this knowledge that you have to be continuously improving. And so the better you are at it, doing different things, maybe automation is key to you, maybe you're containerized and you need to do things a certain way. To me, that makes you a differentiator. But I'm going to tell you what the real secret is, Phil. The secret isn't your technologies. and the secret is not your processes. The ultimate secret, every person here that's part of a company has a secret. It's you. It's the people in the company. The secret is when your people get together and work better together. And so then they do the right process, and then they put in the right automation. So, the answer is both simple and hard. The differentiator from one company to another, it's how well the people are working together and how much they trust each other.
And I just want to jump in on that as well, right? I mean, we talk about culture, and I know, Chris, you're going to cover a bit of that. DevOps promotes the kind of culture that we all know is commonsensical, but for some reason, for many years, we never adopted it. And Chris, you mentioning about people, one of the things I love most about DevOps is the culture of continuously practicing, right? Mastery comes from practicing, right? That's something that we all know, right? 10,000 hours or 10,000 days or whatever. We need to do things over and over again with the ability to fail, with the option to fail, so that we learn. We all know that's something, but it wasn't kind of like crystallized until DevOps became something that brought that to the market. So to answer Phil, that's a differentiator. An environment that does DevOps, allowing you the space to fail, and the space to learn, and the space to keep mastering something over and over again. Automatically that makes you and your team better at what you do. So that becomes a differentiator immediately, if you ask me.
It really is, right? It's like any small team that works together, you tend to know what each other is going to do, and you just work towards it almost unconsciously because you know each other. So, Pradeep, it looks like Matthias has a question in the chat. Did you want to give us?
Yeah. So there is a question: how do you engage the business side to understand that they need DevOps 2.0? Very interesting question. Thank you, Matthias, for asking. The best way to engage with the senior executive on the business side is to showcase them the problem statement and leave the solution statement to them, lure them into that. The best way I have seen a lot of organizations and IT teams and CIOs do that for their board members and CEOs is to provide them a situation and then give them an end state that if we be able to do and provide you this, the capability of visibility, this is what you are going to see. Let me give an example. As a senior executive, they always would be very keen to understand where is those next bug fixes, for the critical customer they have requested for, or where is that next mobile application which businesses always asked for, whether it is for lending or for insurance, clearing those quick insurance claims, so on and so forth, depending on the business. Now, when senior executives ask those updates on these bug fixes and software developments, very often they forget that developers depend on their train of thoughts while working on a specific project. There are many studies who says that you should not be disturbing a train of thought, specifically of creative ideas or developers. If you do that, you end up losing quite a lot of time. So by just providing this particular case, and we have a paper, we can pass it on to you, Matthias, is that by just providing this particular information, that you will be able to check the system update, the critical patches update yourself without disturbing anybody into the value stream. They would be able to gain a lot of manpower back there. A bigger, broader discussion, we can set it up later, but there is a very clear templates and ways by which the business value of IT can be very clearly communicated to business.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a great lead-in question because we're actually going to dig into that a little bit more later. Some of the things I'll just add now, though, is before maybe 10 or 15 years ago, doing DevOps or value stream or whatever, it was sort of optional, right? It's not optional right now. You have to do some of these things at a minimum to survive as a business. You just can't. I mean, there's a phrase out there that every company is a software company, and I'll tell you, when I worked in banks, Wells or Bank of America, we probably had more developers than Microsoft. People don't realize just the amount of development that goes on in corporations all over the globe, right? To kind of another part of the question from Matthias would be, you need to understand, right? And this is, we're going to get to this, right? This is value. This is actually value stream. You're asking a value stream question. How do you get IT to align to the business? Like, how do you understand what are they doing? For too many years in IT, we've just done what we thought was good IT, very often not really understanding what are the business's goals. And they change, by the way, right? That's how businesses work. They see an opportunity, they run to it. If they see a risk, they run from it. They protect against it, right? If they see a cost, they get rid of it. And that's going to make us change in IT, but we might still be thinking of the last thing, and they're already seeing an opportunity, and we have to adapt to that. So it's really important and part of your question is you need to align to the business and understand and talk to them, which also means you probably need to learn to speak their language, right? We had one CIO that they actually brought. He was a business leader. He became the CIO. He was kind of technical, but he certainly wasn't, as technical as probably almost anybody on his staff. But he understood the nexus between business and how to use technology to promote business. And that made that person very, very valuable. Okay.
And if I may just add on as well, how do you engage the business side to understand that they need this DevOps 2.0 or VSM? Well, VSM, I mean, Matthias, it's not new, really. I mean, it's been around for a while, right? In the lean manufacturing space, and in about 10 years ago, there's this movement to actually move value stream mapping, value stream management into the services side of things, right? And now we're seeing that move into software. So value stream management as an approach has been proven over and over again. Yeah, especially when you're talking about repeatable processes, when you're talking about looking at value from the customer side, and your business, that is what they want to do. That's what they want to give to their customers, because they are the one facing the customers. So I encourage you to take a look at value stream management as a general topic. As well, and communicate that in a business language to the business people. That will help as well.
Mm-hmm. Sit down and talk to them, right? Very often people don't talk to their business, which I guess is where I was going with it. And just the same conversation we might have if they bring us in, about whether it's our product or something else. We also have strategy conversations, and it's all about, well, what are you trying to do? What's your goal? What's keeping you up at night? I mean, we don't start with tools. We're talking about what problems do you need to solve for the business? And then we go from there. And you probably, the same approach would work for you. Show them that you're interested in solving their problem and not just producing software, right? Or whatever you do, right? You'll get there pretty quick. So, and we're gonna talk more about that because that's kind of the core. That's a great question. So, all right. So we talked about value stream management. We sort of didn't quite talk about value stream mapping. And what I'll say there is mapping is a tool. And so value stream mapping is a way to basically get to the point. If you don't map it, you can't manage it. Think of it that way. So before you're managing everything, you have to, right, do something like, if I can get my cursors to work, something like this. And this looks busy, but let's walk through it just for a moment. And actually, I think Pradeep in particular talked about some of this, and you did too, Stephen. All right, the first thing you do, and I know there might be some value stream purists and lean manufacturing folks that might be watching this. Yes, I know it's ugly. I didn't follow the rules, but I go for outcomes. So the first thing you'll notice is, and this is live, I actually did this as an analysis when I was an employee at one of my banks. We looked at a current process, which is your top swim lane, and we took the big chunks in there. And first of all, we're looking to make sure that we actually all understand what the process looks like. And you'll be surprised, and I'll show you a more complicated one later. Most people don't know what the process looks like. You can have 4 experts in different areas of your company, and they'll disagree on what the process is. So getting to a single source of truth on the process, any process, is the most important thing. It's your baseline. If we jump down actually to the third swim lane, I do have a little bit out of order. Right? Once you understand what it is, you have to say, well, where do I want to be? And so you say, well, what's my ideal process? And then back up in the middle, the second swim lane down, the DevOps collapse. These are types of things. Now, this is basically an action lane. What did we do? Either we automated something, or we decided we didn't need a step anymore because maybe that piece of the process isn't necessary anymore. And then we just threw some details down below. And in the timing section, you can see that's although this doesn't look like a traditional kind of a value stream flow chart, it's very important to measure, where you're spending your time. probably the biggest waste in any value stream process is waiting for other things. And you'd be amazed at how long you wait for something to happen. They say that up to 80% of a flow is just wasted time waiting for things. So it's important you capture not just the steps, but the time between the steps, what's happening between the steps, and why isn't it flowing better. So this is a kind of a picture of a map of one application making its way into production. Pradeep, did you want to have any comments on this at all?
So, yes. So the question which we were just discussing a minute ago, Chris, is how do we communicate the business value of IT, or how do we communicate DevOps 2.0 value to business? Is the table which is there below. In one of the comment, Chris, you mentioned that IT got to speak business's language. What language actually business speak, and what do they understand the most? Is this particular table below. When you show them the value which this dynamic swim lanes or value stream mapping would bring on table, the number of man hours they will be able to save, and the kind of productivity they will be able to build at the end of this exercise is the crux. When we be able to communicate into this frame and these words to business jump and say that we are on board, let's do this.
Time is money.
So these are a few things. Time is money, and this is where we focus on. This is what we do every day morning.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, did you want to add anything to that, or are you good with that?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just thinking there's so much you can digest here, but let's move on. We have an even more interesting example as we go. So this is kind of where we go. Oh, I know there is one thing to call out here. So now we're going back to the question: is value stream management for everybody? So we have a map. We need to manage this thing. We started to manage it in the second swim lane, like collapsing things, right? We're automating, we're eliminating process. We're starting to manage the stream. Just the fact that we captured a stream that nobody even had on paper ever, that's managing the stream. And you can probably tell by looking at this, there's a lot of teams here. So the idea that value stream mapping or management is for everybody, I think you're kind of seeing that, right? You have some folks, different set of groups that might do, your routing, build engineering teams or whatever, or platform engineering might do builds and compiles, or maybe the developers are doing it. You may have a corporate team that's managing your SCM repositories, maybe not. It's different, right? Again, these are different for every company. But the idea is here, you can see there's a lot of folks involved in this, and they all have to work together to help manage the value flow. Now, what's interesting is this analysis is probably a good 6 or 7 years old at this point. Before we had to do it this way, we'd be writing it on paper. Today, and we'll get to it shortly, we can show you ways in which we actually can do this live. So you don't have to wait 2 weeks to create a piece of paper like this. You can start to see these things in real time. That's pretty cool. So let me go to the next one here. And we kind of talked a lot about this, and I think we'll spend a little bit of time on each one of these, but we'll start here. What problems are we trying to solve? Now, we do have a list on the next slide, but just in general, I didn't know, maybe Pradeep or Steve, if you had a thought on this, or maybe somebody dropped something in the chat, we can answer that.
So just to add, Chris, on this, we were talking about value stream management for everyone, right? And which are the teams who gets best value out of value stream management? What problem are they trying to solve? Before we answer that question, we need to understand what problems are they facing. There are different layers in the organization. The top leadership is always focused on tomorrow. They always want to find out, how is my team going to perform and better off tomorrow? How am I going to serve my customers better tomorrow? The middle management are always thinking about, how am I doing today? Am I justifying my teams, the investment, the faith and trust which my management has put into me? How am I doing today? And the developers who are actually working on the value stream, they're always thinking about, what am I doing today? Am I doing the right thing? Is my priorities right? Am I wasting time? Am I investing more time into something where I should not be? When we bring visibility with a single lens into the picture, all these three answers will be all the three questions would be answered. The question for the developers, they'll be able to see the entire thing with a magnifying lens. The senior management, they will be able to see the work which is going underneath, their teams, and the top management would be able to see, will I be able to justify the questions and investment board and business has put into them. So the problems for different layers is different. And it is critical that each layer would be able to solve those questions and their problems simultaneously. Steve, do you have a view there?
Sorry, I was just responding to Matthias' chat there. I think absolutely, Pradeep, you were spot on, right? I mean, the problems that we're trying to solve depends on who you are and what your situation is right now, right? So the whole idea is knowing. To me, is about knowing what is value stream management, what is value stream mapping, and then understanding the value of that, and then taking that and applying it to your environment and understanding who you're talking to. So if you're talking to the business, then we need to talk about value stream management in a way that solves their problem. For me, I work with middle management and more of the team level people. One thing I see very common is the need for the developers, the teams, to go back to their senior leadership to ask for budget or ask for money to buy some tools or implement some solutions, right? And many times the senior management will come back to you and say, hey, I've given you all these tools, why aren't you using it? What's the problem, right? So what value stream management allows you to do is to now take all those data, surface it into information, and build that business case for the senior management, and that's a value to the the team level people, the middle managers as well. So, but yeah, you're right. Pretty absolutely.
Okay, very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to use the next slide as my answer. So, this is a composition of a couple of things. Some of us that have been in the industry, these are the problems we've been asked to solve over the years. But also in HCL, we talk to a lot of folks, right? A lot of partners and clients, and just, a lot of fun folks, when you go to DevOps Enterprise Summit or wherever it is. And we always ask, well, what problems are you solving? Of course, that's important to us, so we can figure out how do we build things that can help you solve those problems. And they kind of keep coming back to these 8 answers that you're seeing here today. And we thought it was really interesting. They very often they'll operate in sort of a tactical mode. We're like, well, I just have to get releases out the door faster. We don't go fast enough. We only release every couple of months or every 6 months. How do I release every 2 weeks, right? Sometimes you have to say, well, why do you want to release that fast? Is it important? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And not every application has to be at the same speed, by the way, right? You certainly aren't trying to change core banking applications at the same speed you're updating your mobile devices, for example, right? So it makes sense. And then as they go down, you can see there's a bit of a progression on this thing, where they'll say, well, we need to get a handle on risk and security and all these other things, but they're still very tactical. And then they say, well, like Steven said, they have many, many dozens, if not hundreds of tools in an organization. How do you manage across all of that? Still, these are kind of tactical problems, but we're always thinking about, well, risk, revenue, and cost. How do we get at those things? In the conversations, though, we start to see that it starts to shift from the tactical problems, which in many cases are tool problems or short process problems, to larger process problems. So how do I govern across the SDLC, or how do I govern across my value streams? And in very light ways, by the way. We don't want to get in the way of governance, but it's a fact of life, right? What's the phrase? If you live near a dragon, you might as well, recognize that you do. If you have governance in the type of business that you do, recognize it's there and work with it. And then you start to think a little bit bigger, and you say, well, how do we manage to scale that across the organization's best practices? If we have certain teams that are doing things really, really well, kind of some of these questions earlier, right? What's DevOps? Why is it a differentiator? Well, you have some teams that are working well. Figure out what they're doing well, and then teach everybody else, right? Collaboration. And then finally, when you get to this conversation, right? And this is a very fast conversation as it unfolds usually. They ultimately will start thinking, well, and it goes to something we said in the beginning. We have to make sure our IT, whatever the value is that IT thinks they're doing, it has to satisfy the business value. There's no point in doing IT that doesn't do something for the business. Now, certainly understand, right? You do have to do infrastructure and architectural improvements and other things. But to the question I think Matthias asked earlier, well, how do you get the business to recognize it? The business has to understand that sometimes that architectural work, that foundational work has to be done for them to move forward in business as well. And that's your job. You have to explain that to them. Why does it matter? Why should they care about retiring architectural debt, for example, right? And ultimately, when you do all these things, it kind of goes back to what we talked about. Everybody's working better together. You're behaving better together. You're collaborating. I know you dropped, this idea in here, Matthias, that sending emails should be replaced by a collaboration platform. Absolutely, right? The idea is to collaborate, right? Email isn't as interactive as a collaboration platform. So the other thing to note, there's a lot going on this slide, though, by the way, right? So there's shorter term things, there's medium term operational, and then there's the strategic views, and they build on each other. You could be doing a couple of different things at different times, but at the end of the day, this is the set of things that people talk to us that generally we can say, here are the problems we're trying to solve. So I didn't know, Stephen, did you happen to have a view on it?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, this is the cheat sheet, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nothing to add from my side. Yeah.
But so one thing which I really want to bring home here, the key message which I want to bring home here, Chris, is that value stream management is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Gone are the days when people used to work in silos, people used to work in individual value streams, and feeling good and happy about it when they go to bed at night. Gone are the days when everybody was measured, by the effort they used to put in. This is the day and age of results, and the way organization get results is by working together. And the biggest problem of working together is that nobody knows who is the other person doing.
Right.
Only when you have a single lens to see through, that is when everything comes alive.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very good solution to a very large problem.
Yeah, I saw a graph once. I need to pull it back out, but it was from, I think D-Zone did it. And they basically said, well, what's the biggest barrier at that time to implementing DevOps? And I would argue it's the same question for value stream management. And they had 3 lines. I think it was either skills, the time available, or culture. And at less than 150 people, so they broke it out by organizational sizes. At less than 150 people, it was some combination of either skills or time to do the work. When you hit 150 people, the culture line just shot through the roof. And so I think that kind of goes to your point where, especially when you're getting bigger, when you don't know each other or not as well, you really have to think about how are you working together, because it's no longer a problem of time or money or skills. It's a problem of working together. And it was crazy, right? The graph just went woof right off the charts. So I'll have to pull that one out for the next one. Go ahead.
Yeah, just talking about that, you brought to my mind, some of the work that I used to do before with, SAP teams, particularly SAP teams who wants to, get into DevOps, and I like point number 5 there, optimizing flow across the end-to-end value stream. Teams are working together. We are talking about different technology as well, and different technology has different nuances, and especially in SAP. Trying to do DevOps in SAP is pretty much different from, what you and I, are used to in the Java and the open distributed systems world, where we can, we can check out code from a code repository, build it into a package, and then pull that package into a artifact repository, and then pull it into different environments. Very, very easy, and many teams take it for granted. And then they point the finger at SAP and they say, "Hey, SAP teams, why are you guys so slow?" And I've been on the SAP side, and I kind of understand that technology, right? So, having a value stream end-to-end view of that kind of like gives everybody a better perspective of all the different challenges as well, and communicate, what is needed, in these different technologies as well. If that makes sense at all, yeah.
It does. I'm glad you said that, because when you pointed this out on the slide, I never really realized it, but number 5, which sits in the middle, is optimizing flow, right? That's value stream management. And there's probably a reason it fell into the middle there, because it can go both up the stack, well, to the top of the page, which means it's working towards the smaller teams and, even individuals. But if you go down, you're working towards, cross-functional managers and, transformation executives, those sorts of things. So, it's interesting because that's exactly what value stream management, or the managing the flow, that's what it's all about. Being able to go up and down across an organization, or left to right, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. I think we talked about it a lot, but we tend to look at these first principles. So we often get the question, where do I start? And we said, well, just keep it simple, right? You're usually working in 4 dimensions, whether it's DevOps or value stream or whatever. We've talked about this now, for the last 45 minutes. There's the automation piece, there's the flow piece, the lean flow. There's measuring everything, and then there's the culture, or the alignment, collaboration, sharing. All of those things fit into culture. We use automation and lean flow as the guardrails, measure everything, and then always drive towards culture, which ultimately, if you're doing the culture piece right, it's hard to really change culture, but you can change how you behave with each other. By doing that, that part of that is aligning to the business outcomes as well. So this is just a nice way to remember, if you're like, wow, there's so much to think about. It's like, keep calm. Culture, automation, lean process, and measure. Okay. Did you guys have a comment on it, or we can move on to the next view?
No. So this is so this particular slide is self-explanatory. Talks about quarter of things. What we see in the market is a lot of organization does the automation piece and think that, we have done the technology transformation, but till the time it is not well adopted, the employees and users are not using it. You're not making those cultural changes and manage the change management. It remains incomplete. So please don't think that once you automate things, that is end of the journey. That is actually one step closer. But only when the change management and the culture piece has been managed well is when it brings the long-term sustainable, change and value to the organization. Mm-hmm. Culture is the key, Chris.
It is. Okay, let's take a look here. So I think we've pretty much established, yes, it's for everybody, right? But what does that really mean? So we actually started to touch on this too, right? So again, every organization is going to be different, but we tend to think it blocks into 3 or 4 major groups, roles, personas, things like that. On the upper left, it can be an Agile team, and it can be any team. It doesn't have to be a development Agile team. I mean, why can't you have a security team that's Agile, right? So it's really about smaller teams that are working together, a couple of pizza teams maybe. How do they visualize their work? That's a value stream flow that you're seeing. So if you recall that chart we showed the first time, this is what it looks like in modern tooling. This is where you can see the dots that matter, where they are, what's holding them up, where there's a bottleneck, how long is their work in progress. You could click on any one of those things in a modern tool system, and you can see what's going on with it. Pull requests, who's assigned, vulnerabilities, all those things. That's so teams can get a handle on what's really in front of them and the things they're depending on. Lower left, we could talk about it like a DevOps or a platform team maybe, but it's a little bit hard to see there. But that's basically pipelines of pipelines. So as you can imagine, these could be multiple products where you need to, or even a single product that has multiple parts of front end to back end, database, the whole thing, where you need to make sure the code versions are in sync. It also might mean they're coming from different systems. Maybe you have 7 different groups, each running their own version of Jenkins. These are the types of things where you can start to have this visibility around a pipeline of all of your pipelines. Lower right, this is sort of a release manager's orchestration view. This is about technically orchestrating your releases, right? That's kind of part of it. If you have the data to look in the pipelines and you have the data from the value stream view, well, why not? Go ahead. You can put a release management process around it. And then finally, the one on the upper right, yet another group would be, we call them transformation leaders. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but it's really about having the ability, now that you have all of this data coming from all of your different tools, usually live or within a 5-minute, polling lag. What do you do with it? How do you view it? Well, you can view it in almost infinite ways. You can create a CISO dashboard. You could create a testing manager dashboard. You could create, that cross-functional team, development team dashboard over any of the items that you're pulling in, so that you can make, basically relevant charts and graphs and trending for them. But Steve or Pradeep, Steve, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, particularly around the release managers side of things. I know the firsthand the pain that release managers have to go through, every release cycle. And when we get into this, DevOps, situations, it just becomes so much more challenging. Release managers typically have to coordinate many teams, have to understand what went on, have to, get visibility into everything because, I like to compare them with, I'm not sure people on the call are they familiar with F1 Formula One. So I've gone into Formula One again this year, right? And that release manager is that lollipop man in the pit stop. That person has to tell the driver when he or she can go,
Yeah.
and if he or she makes a mistake there, it is really really painful. So I want to single out release managers, and I think VSM has a big visibility value for them as they try to do this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. They don't get enough love, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Pradeep, any comments on this? Again, it's a different angle.
No, I'm pretty good.
Okay.
No, this is pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So we promised you a better example or a more complex example maybe, and here we go. So this again is another process that we did an examination for in a bank. And so this is interesting, right? Because you can see, sorry, I'm trying to get myself to be able to see things here. In the process that we're about to show you, there were, depending on the path you take, which is also interesting, right? There are anywhere from 5 to 11 team handoffs. Matthias, to your point, right? Emails, mocks, chats, coordinations, 2 to 5, at least 2 different ticket systems are being used, right? And some of them probably was not even any tracking at all. 2 to 4 service requests filed, 28 manual or isolated steps in the process with branch points. I think when I was tracing it, I quit after about 100 and some traces with different paths, just because I just couldn't, I just didn't want to do it anymore. So there's 100 different paths or more. 5 different vendors were involved in this thing, and then at a minimum 4 primary support teams were involved. So you had a build engineering team, a DevOps platform team, a web server engineering team, a Blade Logic team, and there were actually a couple more too. So it was a mess, right? And this was just to get a simple piece of SQL code into production. And this is what it looked like. So this is the value stream map. And as you can see, 4 teams down the left side, right? 4 swim lanes, dev teams, build engineering at the time, DevOps platform team, and a release management team. And you can see, like, for example, the dotted red lines, this is where emails, all those sorts of things, right? These are just unnecessary waste in the whole process. Like I said, I stopped trying to trace each path because I gave up after about 100 different variations of it. You can see it's a mess. So value stream map, and by the way, getting what you're looking at, this is just one process for one piece of code, took 2 weeks. I had to go to, Jim, the dev team guy, and I said, Jim, after I put one version on paper, is this the process? Well, it's almost right, except you have to change this and that, and John is wrong about that over on build engineering. So I go to John in build engineering. John, Jim says this, and he goes, well, he's wrong about that, but he's right about this, and by the way, he missed that. Then we went to the release management team, same conversation. This happened for 2 weeks, over and over. 3 to 4 people that are supposed to be an expert on this process, who put this stuff into production every time they do a release, couldn't agree on what the process looked like. It took us 2 weeks to get there. It took us 2 weeks before they finally said, yes, Chris, this process is what we all believe is the truth, the single source of truth. Only until you know that can you do the next thing, which is this. So, there's a legend there, but basically you can see if there's a red X, we eliminated it. We decided that piece wasn't necessary anymore. Probably existed for a good reason at one point. If it's green, it means we've converted it somehow, or other boxes converted them into automated steps. And so you can see a huge collapse there. Take a look at it and see if there's one thing that stands out to you. One of the things that happened here as we actually analyze this process with a value stream map. Steve, anything you noticed there in particular, a very big thing?
Yeah, for sure. I can see that one team has been completely eliminated from from the value stream, and that freed up that team to do something else that's probably more valuable.
Right.
Absolutely.
Build it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is critical, right? When we remove redundancies, we not only free up the manpower, we free up the bandwidth overall for the organization. We have bandwidth which can be very well aligned and utilized somewhere else.
So
Exactly.
this thing went from, I think it was a couple of hours down to about 5 minutes once we did this. Now, again, this is the mapping exercise. So what do you do when you put it in a tool? It looks something like this. So the workflow collapses. We've combined multiple automation steps, and you can see what this looks like. It's a huge difference from this to that. Okay. So what were the results? This is the results. We went down to basically one team handoff, 0 to 1 on the email coordinations that needed to happen after that point. Service requests went to 0. It was pretty much automated, or the flow was optimized. So you just were getting the request in some other way. We pretty much chopped out the number of process steps we got it down to basically 5 manual and 12 automated in this iteration of it. Eliminated a bunch of tools that didn't belong there. They were just extra steps in the process like everything else. And with every tool comes a team, and with every team comes a delay. That's how you have to think about these things. Primary support team counts dropped down to 2. Basically, we got just rid of folks out of that triage and resolution loop. And in general, 75% increase in speed across all of the environments. So going back to that, measuring what you're doing, timing the parts between the steps. So what that means is if a release used to take 4 hours, it only takes an hour. In some environments like performance test, we saw it go upwards of 90 to 95% just because of the complexity of the environment. When we did this, instead of doing a deploy to performance test environment every couple of weeks, we could do it nightly, and instead of taking 8 hours, it only took an hour. It was amazing, huge. And so just think about that. Every release cycle now you can performance test, right? It's a big deal. So what does it look like today? Well, kind of goes back to something like this. This is a blow up of one of those pictures we saw before. These are what tools do today with this sort of thing. So you have live views, real-time data or near real-time data, so you can make real decisions about what's happening and not working off, a 4-week-old piece of paper. So I know we just have a couple minutes left. Steve or Pradeep, is there something you wanted to comment here? And I'll actually turn it to the next one as well. And I do want to leave just a minute or two to wrap up. But you guys have any thoughts on this you want to add?
No, I'm pretty good, Chris. I'll let Steve make a comment if any.
No, I think yeah, the whole idea is today we live in a world where we have so many tools, so many DevOps teams, so many tools, and the DevOps best practice is around giving the team the autonomy to choose the best tools, right? Giving the teams the autonomy to choose the best tools, which is great, right? But how do you then talk to all these tools, pull together and aggregate all that data together? You need technology to do that. You need automation for this, and what you show there is just a great representation of what that means.
Yeah. So, just so we don't get, again, lost in tooling, let's all just, take a 20-second back here and look at the journey we just took together tonight or today. There's DevOps, there's value stream, which is the next level of DevOps. There are tools, there is process, but really it's about aligning with your business, understanding how to see what's really going on so that you can help the business make the right business decisions about where to get rid of costs, risks, and make investments to build revenue or provide for their, some companies are, profit, not-for-profit. So, how do they serve their communities? And you can do that if you can see everything in one place and have a good risk-based conversation about what the reality is of what you're trying to do. And kind of that's where we are. So that's the big goal, right? Let's not lose sight of why we're doing all of this. It's ultimately to have happy clients, communities, and customers. So any final comments? I guess we have about 1 minute, and if not, we can turn it back over to Dheeraj. What I would say is I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here today at whatever time zone you're in. If you have thoughts or questions, I'm sure there's a way that we'll put out. You can reach out to us. We can make these slides available as well. So Dheeraj, I think over to you. I'm sorry, Steve or Pradeep, any final words?
No, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for your questions. Good questions, good interaction. Happy to continue this more and provide you more holistic view in what do we do in detail on one-on-one discussion.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, Dheeraj.
Dheeraj?
Thanks a lot, Chris, Stephen, and Pradeep. I think it was a great webinar altogether. And just like Pradeep mentioned, lots of questions and interactions during the chat session as well. And also for audience reference, the webinar is being recorded and will be available as an on-demand webinar by next week as well. So you can also share it with your friends and colleagues, which I'm sure will be really helpful for them. So once again, really thank you to Chris, Stephen, and Pradeep, and hoping to bring this kind of webinar more soon enough for the audience as well. And this is Dheeraj Nayal, Global Community Ambassador at DevOps Institute, signing off now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.